Okay, let's see what you got. What are your questions? And comments. Comments are fine. Terrible film, whatever you want to say.
Well, it's nice to see you still wearing a Norwegian sweater.
You saw it on the film. Yeah. Well, it was a great year I spent in Norway marrying Berit. She said a condition for my marrying her would be that I would have to come to Norway, where she is from, get to know her family, win them over if possible, because they're prejudiced against Americans, and learn the language and all that. And so I did, and studied at the University of Oslo year. But of course, almost any American going to Norway is going to come away with a Norwegian sweater. Right?
So I've done 50, 60 years later.
That's a great sweater. Question.
So in about 10 years ago, my daughter was involved with Equate for her 8th grade project. We went and we did Equate, did some training for us, and I got to go to. And one of the things that really struck me was how joyous and fun it was. And I didn't see quite as much of that in the film, so do you want to talk about joy and fun in protest actions? The dancing thing, like, I don't know if you remember this, we did a dance for PNC.
Yes, we did.
We asked them to dance with us.
We did a dance with PNC, and that was our first target. We did a 5 years, right? I mean, there were people who, I was one of the major people pushing for PNC to be our first target, and there were people who said, George, you're crazy to tackle such a big thing. I said, well, it may take a while, but they're so yummy. It'd be really great to go after them. And so we did win. Wow. But your question about it was?
About joy and fun.
The joy and fun. Yeah. What more human than joy and fun? And yes, there's plenty else that we can express, and we do. But to be activists only sharing a part of our repertoire and not sharing the whole thing, I think it means being less than whole. So it's already embarking on something where we know we'll shrink, we'll just be a part of ourselves. Ooh. Right? So far better to be our whole selves. So yes, in that campaign I cried also. We didn't actually have crying sessions as such, but that would be more often by ourselves or with each other, pairs of people. But part of the joy that we found and still find in Earthquaker Action Team is the joy of going ahead and attacking it instead of holding back and complaining. I mean, what good does that ever do anybody's morale to hold back and complain, right? Come on. Nobody thrives doing that. Whereas, yes, complaining, but also crying because it's terrible what's going on. And laughing because you're free to laugh if you do some crying. So that's my experience.
Yes. One of the things back here that was said was how they were enlightened by the number of nonviolent movements that have taken place both in this country and then all throughout the world. We really weren't aware that there were so many and that so many had been successful. So that was really something that stood out to some of us. I guess, and I missed, of course, the first half of the film, because I was like, you know why. But so maybe this is a question that's answered in the first part of the film, but when did you realize that nonviolent protest in particular was the way you were going to achieve your dream of social justice, and when did that become connected to the global stuff?
Well, that's a great question, the when. Because I'll bet it goes back to high school. And I knew about strikes. I come from a working class family. So my dad told me about strikes. And that's one of the most frequently used nonviolent actions, right? So maybe that gave me some prejudice toward, that, well, what else is there? And then the more I looked at it, and I was always a history bug. Even in high school, I was fascinated with history. And what? The colonists in attacking the British overlords did a boycott? How cool is that? They even dumped some of the tea in the harbor as a way of expressing how much they were willing to give up tea. And I don't know if you know English people. I've lived for a year in England. I mean, tea is like gold, right? Everybody's drinking tea all the time. So the very idea of throwing tea in the ocean, oh my goodness, well, what's more extreme than that? And there they were doing that. Yeah, so I just picked up, as I was reading history, I've always been interested in history, whoa, those people did that, and then they got that result, and whoa, those people did that, and they got that result. So the whole idea that to get any result, you have to do violence, even though that is a kind of message from our crazy culture, I decided, well, that's wrong. That's one of the many things that's wrong. Women aren't as smart as men. That's another thing that was true in my high school days. Women are obviously not as smart as men. Well, that's obviously wrong. So I had many opportunities, as we all do, to notice isn't wise, is very frequently not wise. And so we need to be inquiring, and that's one reason why I love Quakers so much, because we're willing to ask the hard questions about what comes down from the culture. And that's, I wonder if that's really true. And then, of course, when I got to be a researcher and with the tools of sociology, then to be able to dig into all those cases, and the 1400 that you can just go online anytime you want. Global Nonviolent Action Database. Global Nonviolent Action Database. And knock yourself out. I mean, you got 1,400 cases to play with. To look at on all the continents and on different issues. So look for your favorite issue. If it's civil rights, if women's rights, it's whatever. Look for your favorite issue. You'll find cases. But the thing is, that's only a small fraction of how many times we human beings have done that kind of thing. We are awesome. And we don't even know it because it's not in our history. At least I don't know what history books you read. The history books I was given in high school were all about battle, 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 battle. And that's mostly what we see in the newspapers today, right? Violence still gets, and TV, violence still gets prime coverage, right? How much are they covering the boycotts? Even though a boycott can be more powerful than a military battle. And so I realized, oh my gosh, this is, yet another way the world's crazy. The world says women are not as competent as men. That's crazy. I mean, there's just all these different ways that the world, racism, crazy, right? But hugely, we've been soaked in racism. So our culture is responsible for all this shit, really. And who's going to take care of that? We're going to take care of it by being skeptical. And if somebody says to you violence is more powerful than nonviolence, well, let's just check that out. And so it's been tremendous fun for me as somebody who likes to be a rebel to find, oh, wow, there's this case after case you'll find in the database of people trying a violent revolution and it failing, and then trying a nonviolent revolution and it succeeding. Whoa. So that was tremendous fun to do. And you can imagine those Swarthmore students who are smart as a whip just really like digging their hands into it, because usually they're learning what other people have already researched, right? But I said, no, on this one, well, we'll do some of that to get you ready, and then you will do the research. You will do the digging into history. You will find these cases, and I will help you to dig out the stuff that you need in order to make those publishable. And now we have over 1,400 cases, and that could be doubled as soon as there's a Swarthmore professor as willing as I was to work on that. There was another question.
So, how do you think the No Kings protest seemed to be really successful, or at least drawing attention? So, if they do one more, at what point do you think we'll have to find something different, or something to make it grow differently?
Well, that's the nice thing about mass media. They'll usually give us the feedback of when something's not working anymore, not getting attention, because the mass media are hyper attentive to what people are interested in, right? And so when we do, like Quakers have sometimes gotten into a habit of a vigil, and let's get together and do a vigil. Well, after you've done the 5th one and nobody's paying attention at all anymore, that's feedback. Try something different. And so that's the answer, I think, is to keep finding things different. And we can be creative, but also we can look into the database and find just a treasure trove of things that people have tried over the centuries in different countries and say, oh, well, that's interesting. I wonder how that would work. Haven't heard of that happening in the US yet. Let's try that. Right. Yeah.
So where's the first, I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Where's the first of the variables for parameters that you're looking for to, like you said, well, if we have a situation with the immigrants, what ways can we attack that? So is that what the nonviolent?
The nonviolent way of doing it, global database, the global nonviolent action database.
Is that something in the database covers like that you?
There's a good chance that there's a case like that in there, which can stimulate our thinking for something that might be different, but it stimulates our thinking, right? Yeah. So the cases in the database aren't usually there for repetition, because there are different circumstances, different centuries in some cases, certainly different countries and so on. So on the other hand, they'll often give us ideas. So they'll say, whoa, that worked for them. I think a variation that might work for our country or our town or our state might be a version like this. So it can be playful, which is one of, I think, the attractions of nonviolent struggle, because there's such an association a lot of people have with nonviolent struggle with, do I like lying? You saw in the last scene, you saw me lying on that road, that driveway. Do I like lying on the driveway at my age? Now I'm 88. I even less want to lie on the driveway. So thank goodness there are hundreds of other things we could do besides lie on driveways. So that's part of the advantage of having the database, is so people can just pace through and, it's kind of boring. No, that's way too hard. Maybe we could do that. And that's, for anybody who's ever used the joy of cooking, right? We're stimulated when we read recipes from others. Well, in the same way, we're stimulated when we read recipes about nonviolent struggle. And what a lot of people who are already, were brought up in the United States that said violence is more powerful than nonviolence, will then need to be coaxed into trying it sometimes, because they'll say, well, but the more violent thing is also the more powerful, and you might run into somebody who believes that, and you might need to say, well, keep reading, try reading this, try reading that. Because in the number of the cases on the database, people tried a violent revolt against a dictator and were defeated. And a couple years later, tried a nonviolent revolt and won. And that's very interesting. Yes.
Are there groups in Philly doing like those trainings actively still for showing up at a protest and being like prepared?
Are people being prepared still?
Yeah, are there trainings going on still?
Oh yeah.
Specific groups in Philly that you know, or?
Let's see, we don't have the training center that I started. That lasted for 20 years and then it lasted for another 20 years, but it hasn't lasted now. But there are definitely people who love to do trainings. One of them was the woman on the film named Eileen Flanagan, very articulate. She's an awesome trainer. She's a Quaker from Mount Airy. She's not far away. And she knows the phone numbers of other trainers who are now active. I'm no longer active as a trainer because I can't pay good enough attention anymore. And so, sigh. But there are wonderful trainers, many of whom I've trained, who can meet your needs.
Okay, I'll write that name down.
Yeah, yeah.
Well, it's more of a personal note. I was interested, you had been diagnosed with cancer, a different form of cancer, and you were able to fight that. How many years did you have?
It was diffuse histiocytic lymphoma. It was a lymphoma that was a killer, mostly killed people. And I'd never heard of it. And we didn't have much of a reputation in our family for, or you know, a history in our family of having cancer. So when I got cancer, whatever I was, 40 or something, it was like, what? What on earth is going on? And then when I started going to the various diagnostic tests to try to figure out just which exactly cancer it is and what's going to be needed and stuff like that, I saw the doctors looking very, what can I say, not cheerful.
Pessimistic?
Not optimistic at all. And then, you know, when we sat down, and well, this and this and this, they said, well, one thing is going to have to be surgery, and we're going to really take a lot. Ooh. And they did. They took a lot. And still couldn't get it all. So it was a very drastic assault on me. So that was why I realized this is going to have to be an all-out fight. I'm going to have to let go of the other things I'm involved with, right? Do minimal parenting. My wife will need to let go of her job partly in order to be able to spend more time parenting. And that's going to have to be my project now, is seeing if I can live. And it was a big question. So then I got to be, you can tell I'm a researcher, right? So then I started researching, what can you do about cancer? Of course, the doctors had their own ideas, but I wanted more ideas than that. So I went to a Quaker healing gathering and met a bunch of Quakers who had experienced remarkable healings in their own lives and told me what they did. And after a bit, when I explained to them, this was a long weekend, and I explained to them just how bad a shape I was in, they said, oh, well, then let's make you the focus. That should be interesting, George. Do you mind being the focus? Mind? I mean, I'd be grateful. You know. So then they spent a whole day doing different kinds of prayer and different kinds of laying on of hands and different things like that to really like focus the 25 people or so on, let's heal George. And it was amazing how I came out of that weekend feeling like I was ready to, you know, take on the world again. It was really amazing. And I wasn't healed, but I was like that.
Open here.
Sorry?
Open.
Open. That's the thing. Because there's a kind of closing at dying time, right? I guess I'll give up. Feels easier at some point. There were moments when it felt easier to me. And I had a hard life anyway, because the children, well, one of our children was really acting out. Peter was having a hard time. You can imagine Peter already having a hard time and then thinking he was going to lose his dad. Oh my God. So there was, it was a lot to cope with, and I realized I just have to give up, you know, working a job, forget about job. My full time is going to have to be seeing if I can survive. Yeah. So I have written about that. It was published in the national magazine, Getting the Goods on Cancer, I called it. And I don't know if it's on the internet, if you can just Getting the Goods on Cancer by George Lakey, maybe. But anyway, if not, I could send you a copy or something, so we could dig it up. I haven't been promoting cancer cures lately. But it was basically, the other thing I could mention about dealing with that cancer was that I decided, go for everything. No reason to specialize in one form. Okay, chemotherapy sounds like got to do chemotherapy. Okay, but that doesn't mean I only do chemotherapy, right? How about spiritual healing? Right. What about that? What about diet? Oh my gosh. There are people who believe that the kind of food you eat is actually going to influence how healthy you can be and how much you can recover. Okay, I'll go into diet. I went into this and that and this and that and this and that. So it basically became a full-time job doing all these different things that I heard of and had no time to, for sure, know it was going to make a difference. But I figured, out of the, whatever it was, 8 or 10 things I was doing, if a few of them worked, that'd be fine. So, and of course, dealing on all those modalities, getting loved very much by my friends. Oh my gosh. Some of my friends just said, we're going to have to love George through this, right? Getting all that was itself reinforcing, right? So then I got stronger and more able to do more of, more healing kinds of things and take more chances with healing and stuff like that. So it's a wonderful Quaker gathering of healers. I spent a week and then didn't want to leave the place. Just stayed around that locale. Everybody else went home, but I stayed in that locale for another 3 days, just like soaking up the leftover vibes from these Quakers who knew something about healing. So yeah, I'm so grateful. So I've doubled my lifetime, right? I was 40, so now I'm almost 90.
Yes. I have 2 things. One, the No King's Day and these type of rallies. Emily had mentioned about the joy of being in these demonstrations and singing and whatnot, and what fun it is. And we found that also true at the various demonstrations that we've been to in North Carolina and Maryland and whatnot. That people are having a lot of fun. It's quite different than the Vietnam protests that we participated in many years ago, where people were very somber and people were being shot and whatnot. These seem more happy and people seem more like they like being together. And, oh, I didn't know you were interested in this. My question is on your global database is, I have a good friend who's from Myanmar, and she can't go back to her country or she's dead. And from your experience in Sri Lanka, I was wondering what you might have learned there that people can use in really violent areas or violent protests, because peaceful demonstrations, at least from what I've seen in Myanmar, doesn't go very far, or has to.
Right. I actually got to Myanmar for 5 days, somewhat undercover, and worked with people there. Figuring out the right sort of recipe or strategy for a particular country with its particular dictatorship, particular cultural influences, and so on is really hard. It's an art of strategy. So although I've gone to so many countries being helpful, I haven't ever said, I know what you should do. I've said, well, there's this, and then those people did that, and then those people did that, and let's see, is that stimulating anything? Well, what about this? Oh, well, that's interesting because so-and-so did that, and what happened was blah, 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 like that. And once people start, in my experience, once people start, including in South Africa back in the old apartheid days, once people start realizing, wait a minute, this is actually a social invention that has been innovated in many, many countries at many, many different times in history, and we could just explore it like a treasure trove, you know? So in every place I've gone, actually, people have been a bit frozen by it seems like it's either this or this, or maybe this or this or this. And not been in a creative place, including in this country. I don't think we're being very creative about Trump. And what's really fun and builds the movement much faster is when we get creative. But one source of creativity is that global nonviolent action database, because it includes so many, sometimes almost crazy looking things that people have done in different circumstances, some of which might be worth trying for us. Also, the media are a consideration, right? The more often we are innovative, which might mean borrowing something from 19th century, whatever country or whatever, but bringing new things in, the more likely we are to get media attention. And the more media attention, the better, right? So that's why I'm so excited about that database as a source book. It won't tell you what to do. It's just much more, wow, all those things were done by people, and maybe some of them would suit us. Wouldn't that be interesting? Yeah, we're way too, I find most people's imaginations are way too constricted. We either do a vigil or we do a fast or whatever. Just only a couple of choices when there's so much more that we could do. Yes?
I have a two-parter, but I don't know if we have time. So sometimes when you're protesting causes, the people you're encountering are just bad people, but a lot of the times they're kind of good people who were maybe just raised with wrong values or, have wrong information and stuff like that. And so sometimes when you're trying to tell them things, you're actually telling them something that kind of hurts them because they've been doing something wrong and they didn't even realize it. So I'm wondering, how do you get over the hurdle of telling them painful things? Like they could react with anger or sadness or, how do you do that? Does that make sense?
It's their responsibility to think that through. It's your responsibility to control in however you do, which might be kind of sweetly, depending on the circumstance, right? And how they are. Or it might be emphatically, or it might be, I'm trying to remember the civil rights story in which there was a confrontation at a sit-in and somebody was pushing somebody who was sitting in a lunch counter, and he turned and said something like, "You dog." It didn't sound nice at all, but there was something about the way he said it and met the eyes of the guy, and there was a kind of openness in his face, apparently, even though he said those words, that it was like, and he walked out. And 5 days later, he was in the little association in that town that was in support of the sit-ins. So there can be lots of experimentation rather than doing the same thing over, and trying different things with different people in situations of drama, because it's in situations of drama when people are more, alive and more available, you might say, more available for something different. And that's what as a dominant direct action person, you're always looking to try to get people to try different responses rather than same old, same old. But that means we have to get creative too, and also do different things rather than same old, same old. Quakers, we've probably done enough vigiling now for a century or two. And that's the beauty of the Global Nonviolent Action Database. So many wonderful, imaginative, creative things that people have done historically that one or two might work for us if we just take the while to do some examination, and then also can spur us to create new ones, because there's no reason creative people, Quakers, creative people. Another question? Yeah.
I really appreciated watching your movie, your journey, and it came so close to the present, and yet so much has happened since the end of your film and the present. I kept trying to formulate a question that encapsulates what next, you know, I mean, it just, and I'm hearing your responses to some of the options, you know, like the database for ideas, you know, about nonviolent ways to explore and be creative, and I think it's all good advice. I guess one of the things I confront personally is a sort of sense of hopelessness about not feeling like I understand the front from which certain successes have been made through social media, where I meet people who are getting their news from a source that I don't even look at, and understanding it to be gospel. And so it's just like, in some regards, it's like, take the temperature of the media on how effective your nonviolent protest may be, is kind of like, what if it's kind of getting squashed or misconstrued? It's just like, there's that too right now, and it's so complicated and tricky, and I really feel like social media has changed the playing field in so many ways that is beyond me, because it's not ever really been my favorite medium. I'm a more dynamo Quaker that loves to be in person.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, I kind of feel like a minority in that way sometimes, and wonder if you think that there's anything we miss, you know, with our long-standing practices, you know, of nonviolence. It's just like, in terms of just like the way that which we've been opposing has earned themselves to infiltrate our culture and change people's minds in a way that's so dark and hateful. And I mean, it's unfortunately so accessible and entertaining, and people just so sucked into it. You know, it's just like, that's where I sometimes, as much as standing in person, I feel like, gosh, I feel like something's happening in realms that I am absolutely unaware of on social media platforms, that work is being done elsewhere. I'm not sure how else to fight it. I mean, do you have these thoughts? This is just kind of rambling about a sense of, you know, just like wanting to do good in a nonviolent way, but feeling overwhelmed by social media's influence against our causes. How best to confront that?
What's your experience with social media? Would you say that most people are pretty self-protective when they're writing?
Not always.
Not always.
I think some people, I mean, I am, you know, because I kind of fear all kinds of things that I don't understand, like being misconstrued and hacked or whatever. You know, I mean, it's just, I kind of don't trust the landscape to be a safe place that I know how to navigate very wisely.
Oh, well, that's a great guess to give that time up. I mean, that's a great reason to get that up, yeah. I do fine without social media. I do fine without social media. I think face-to-face is just so much stronger. So it just conveys so much more.
Absolutely. But do you feel kind of like there's something more that needs to be done in areas that we're not present for being in person, that needs to be addressed, that we should be more creative about, you know? And I guess is my question, like other fronts that we haven't considered that aren't in the playbook yet, that maybe need to be because the landscape has changed so dramatically.
How do you lie down on social media?
Exactly, right? Yeah.
One of the things you pointed out in the movie is that we all have commonality. So when I get into conversations where they lead to violence, or we're just not going to listen to another view, I make the point that social media is like electricity. I like electricity. I like buses running on time. I like being able to go to food shopping and there's food. So if you go to violence, because you're listening to that echo chamber on social media, that's going to go away. You're not even going to have that. Because if there's any type of violent action, the country becomes more totalitarian. We're not going to have any of that commonality anymore. It's all going to go away. So, I don't know if that answers your question, but that's the way I approach it. Wait a minute, like, I like the water. I like turning on the water in my house. It works.
Yeah. And I think we see that in the protests currently taking place in Minnesota. Depending what channel you turn on,
Yeah.
you get a completely different view. And I'm wondering where the Quakers have been in that, because
I'm wondering too.
I have not seen that, I
I'm
haven't
wondering
heard that, and I
too.
looked it up, I haven't read that, so.
Yeah.
You haven't either?
No, I don't know, and I'm so curious because just a couple summers ago I spent a week with Minnesota Quakers, so I know a bunch of them would be involved, and I'm sure are involved, but I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what they're doing. Yeah, I don't know. I'm not at all optimistic about social media as a means, as worth our time, frankly.
No, I don't. I don't dabble in it.
I just wanted to say that on Friday night, a bunch of Quakers from Cumberland County, we attended I guess you could call it, it was a vigil for Nicole. And it was entirely organized by the Hispanic community, which has been a very isolated community. And for them to organize this and invite all of us, and then honor us as fellow allies, as she was an ally. It was so moving. And all we had to do was show up. All we had to do was show up. So that was a hopeful.
Was it because of the compassion thing you're doing?
Well, it's also because some of us have been involved with CATA, the Farm Workers Support Group, and they were one of the organizers, and we've also been trained as first responders. We're very activist with the Hispanic community, but in isolated ways. This was like more than 100 people. We were in the parking lot where usually the men who are trying to get work, the undocumented men, are being picked up by ICE. We reconsecrated the space. And at the end, they wanted singing, so I went up with Keith and we sang a little chant in Spanish, and everyone joined in, and then other people came in, and it was really something. And it was like a lot of the second generation kids who come to Bridgeton as kids and are now adults, and it was just a very hopeful, wonderful. And it felt like a maturation of the movement. And another piece, you were talking about the role playing that you incorporated into your trainings, and I'm seeing that in some of the trainings that I'm seeing, like the North Star Network right now that has formed and is there to help people go to Canada who feel they really can't stay here. They're using role playing in their training, and it's just a natural piece now. So there's so many ripple effects from the work that you've done that are appearing in other ways. We might not quite think about it, but I see the connection between the early work that you did and some of the things that are much more widely out there now.
So encouraging, so encouraging. Yeah, I wouldn't bother with social media myself. I would definitely go to the face-to-face stuff because the changes we need are deeper than social media can provide. Yeah.
This might put a damper on this otherwise very elevating story, but someone in meeting mentioned today, and I don't know how she knew this, but what Nicole what's her middle name? Renee. That's it, Renee. What she was saying was to the ICE agent, "I'm not mad at you."
Yes, she was saying that.
Talk about a powerful, innocent statement. It didn't save her life, but it resonates. I can't get it out of my own head.
I hadn't thought about activism, but between the No Kings and the things that have been going on in the country, since January, and then what happened in Minneapolis, I'm glad I'm here. I was like, this was, wow. I'm ready to march peacefully. I've had enough. And I'm glad that people are protesting in various around the country over what happened in Minneapolis. And
This, from here on, could become the most exciting part of our entire lives. Because the American empire is now at a point historically when it is just really ripe for drama about major questions. Not just piddling questions, but major questions are up for grabs. With climate, for example, huge question, and already the administration is very clear about that. Forget about climate, pump up the heat, and so on. There's just so many things coming together now that from today on, could be the most consequential part of your life and my life. And I am just so excited about it. I can hardly stand it. And I wish I were not 88. But anyway, I am.
The quality of love that's in this movement right now is really something. I mean, you were mentioning the difference with Vietnam. Somebody was mentioning that. It's true. The whole tone of how these No Kings Day have been organized has been so much about love and respect, and it's really something that you see. I mean, I've never seen anybody go against that.
that's right.
I remember sometimes you used to go to demonstrations and you'd be mortified by some of the behavior of your fellow people, and I've never seen any of that. It's just been really quite extraordinary. That's right.
On Saturday, we did a march down Market Street, and again, same thing. Very different spirits from the old days of, very different spirits. Yeah, I think this is...
None of this is war.
I didn't really want this film to be done. The whole idea of it just felt, I mean, my dad would never have approved my being in a movie. And I just felt so, but now I'm glad, because it does seem like a resource for people in terms of ideas, and it's possible to soldier on no matter what. And I'm glad. All the resources we can get, right, for now, because now might be the most exciting part of whatever, however long lives we've led. It's going to be a very, very exciting time.
I want to thank everybody who organized this, really. This is great. And I wanted to just say that I've had a picture of the Golden Rule. Were you associated with the Golden Rule?
I was a supporter of the Golden Rule. Yeah. And George Willoughby was on the crew, and he was a figure for me, a mentor for me. So I was praying, and demonstrating in behalf of the Golden Rule. Yeah, and then I went later on the Phoenix, which you saw, yeah. And George was here rooting for me. George. Oh, so many opportunities. I did bring some books along, knowing that some of you are readers, and it includes Dancing with History, which is the bio of me, and it does cover some stuff that's not in the film, and it's, some people say, George, you're very transparent. It's almost embarrassing, but anyway. And then there's Viking Economics, which is a vision of what kind of society we could have, and I know that because there are societies that have things way better than we do, and those societies happen to be in Scandinavia. I lived there, Norwegian sweater, learned the language, taught school there, went to university there, wrote a lot, and now there's a book about, what's their magic, because it would be lovely if we had that magic. And then the third book I brought along is the most popular one right now, for obvious reasons. It's called How We Win. It's a short for how, whatever it is we were doing up till now, there'll be something in there that will suggest, oh, and yet there's another option, and wouldn't that be cool? So we can freshen up, try new things, as well as do the great things at work, and remember always solidarity, solidarity, solidarity. And how about if I sign books? Is that okay for me? Yes. Yeah, you're welcome. And maybe there's food, I don't know. Quakers are into coffee or something. I don't know if that happens. Maybe that's not happening, I don't know. Anyway, this is great.
Thank you very much.